I want to welcome Isabella. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Isabel Juma, an accountant by profession. I serve on the Public Procurement Administrative Review Board, whose mandate is to review, hear, and determine tendering and asset disposal disputes within the public sector. In addition, I am also currently the chairman of the Association of Women Accountants of Kenya, a body which was formed to give voice to the needs of women within the accountancy profession. And one of our main mandates is actually to build capacity through training, mentorship, and networking events amongst women accountants. This November, we are going to be having our public finance management training in Kisumu, which is one of the trainings that we offer as we build capacity. And anyone who is able to join us, karibuni sana, please join us. Karibu is a Swahili word for welcome, so karibuni sana.
Thank you, Isabella, and thank you everyone for joining. Please, as we have mentioned from the start, you're really welcome. Feel free to share with us, where you're joining, your name, which organization you're joining from, which country you're in. I'm seeing a lot of folks from South Africa. I've seen Victoria, Australia. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Now, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is our topic for today. And just as a way of laying the introduction on these, I had a story that I like share. It's a very brief story before we go into the panel discussion. So I asked someone, and it's a colleague I work with, and I asked them, what exactly is diversity, equity, and inclusion? How do you explain it in a way that any person can understand? And they explain it with a story, a very brief story, and I want to share that. And he said, diversity, equity, and inclusion is like you having a party, and you have friends around the world, and you want them invited in your party. So diversity is who are you going to invite in the party? Are you only going to invite your own close friends or your own tribe people or your own, age mate or peers? So that speaks to diversity. In terms of equity, he said equity is how do you help those who are not able to attend your party be able to attend the party? So if the party is in Kenya, are you in a position to facilitate those who will love to be part of this party, but they're not able to come? He says that is equity, giving everyone a chance to be able to be part of your party. And in terms of inclusion, now that everyone is in the party, assuming from different countries and different cultures, what kind of food are you serving in the party? What kind of music are you playing in the party? And he said that is inclusion. And for me, that was one of the best definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Having said that, I want to bring into the conversation the very able Njeri, Jomo. And my question to you, Njeri, is what do you understand by diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what are some of these categories of DE&I? Welcome, Njeri.
Thank you, Douglas. I like that story. Perhaps as simple as it could get, Yes, just making sure you have the right food and everyone is included. But yes, it's heavy on, for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in summary, is really about representation and participation of different conversation, but it goes far beyond that. It's about age as well. I keep saying perhaps more from a Kenyan context. We don't have a lot of young people at the very top as much as you'd like to. You don't have a lot of very young CEOs. To be at the very top of any insurance organization, but it's been great just seeing that change begin to happen. It's also about race and tribe as well, making sure that there's that inclusion and nobody's feeling excluded and nobody's feeling that they're not at the table or their interests are not heard or represented. But more importantly, I think for me is often whenever we think about these things, we think about others. It's not very often that we think about ourselves and that unconscious bias. you know, what is it that I do as a natural tendency, or what looks normal to me, that is actually a bias. For example, when I'm hiring, do I look at the list? As I hear sometimes people say, if you have too many young women, then you know sooner or later you'll have a lot of people on maternity leave. What's the other thing? You'll have a lot of people away and so on. So for me, it is that aspect of representation and participation, and every program or policy or activity that ensures that this is happening. But beyond that, beyond the conversation, the action and the deliberate action to put in place initiatives that ensure that the environment is actually enabling for everyone.
Representation and action, deliberate action. I love that. Now, Njeri, as a woman in leadership, what can you say about the need for equal opportunities and the need to speak up confidently where there's a concern?
Thank you for that. I think let's just speak a Kenyan example. For example, we have 58 licensed insurance companies today, 11 that are women-led or have a CEO at the top, which is perhaps a lot of great progress. A decade ago, it was only one. So for women and women in leadership, this whole conversation is central to who we are. Africa as an environment is very patriarchal. Coming to Kenya, a lot of what we do, there's an underlying aspect of patriarchy, and therefore this aspect of making sure that everything we do within our businesses, within our policies, even in our product design, that the voice of women is included is very critical. Now, when we speak to women in leadership, and perhaps to my own journey, I must admit it's probably been tougher than I would hope that it will be in future, and that perhaps has been what has led to us launching the Kenya Women in Insurance, saying that we must be willing to mentor, inspire, and grow other women, and make it easier for them to walk the path perhaps we've walked, a lot easier and perhaps more impactfully. But it takes two. It takes for us to be, as women, to raise our hands, to step up, to be in those environments that create opportunity, so that because we are more aware perhaps of the biases and can be able to create that environment. But it also will take for the younger women to raise their hands and say, I'm willing to be a bit more braver, to be more willing to participate. It's often said that a closed mouth is not fed. So I'm saying it takes two. While the opportunities in the environment will continue to be created, it will take for us not just to sit back and say, I'm a woman and therefore I'm discriminated. It's going to say, well, where there's an opportunity, I'm willing to, we're told, don't wait for a seat at the table. If they don't give you a seat, bring your own, So two aspects to it. As women, we lead the organizations, be deliberate to take action to create that environment that's enabling for all the different groups, but also at the same time for the younger women who, as we grow, to be able to raise our hands and say, I'm here, I'm willing, and live up to what we say we will actually do, and measure up to the competence. It's the competence weight beyond just saying that we need to be at the table, deliver what we say we are going to do at that table.
I really like your answer. And, one thing that has really stood out for me is a closed mouth cannot be fed. So it's a matter of just being deliberate, as you've said, and speaking up and taking initiative. And I like what also, your organization is doing around this conversation. Before I, transition to Justin, I would like to just remind everyone that this session is being recorded, and we will be sharing that also with our participants. Justin, as a young person, what platform have you gotten, or that which you will want to have to lead, take up roles, or participate in an organization?
Thank you very much, Douglas, for having me here, and also for the question that you've just raised. So some of the roles that I've been able to take up mainly in the workplace, because my focus will be more on the youth in the workplace, is taking lead on projects that probably will not have been given to a young person. And as I outline this, again, I'll echo what Jomo has just said. It's not about sitting, lazing around and waiting to be pointed. You have to, stand up and say, maybe I need to give it a trial, and I'm not afraid to fail. So I have worked on projects that have, a large geographical focus. And here at Intellecap, youth, trying to empower these youth. So it has been dealing with persons living with disability, street youth, young single mothers. And remember, all these are within the youth category. And we have partnered with the government to try and change that specific condition that they have been having, because they have unique challenges and they do not get the same platform as others. And we've gone into vulnerable and marginalized communities to try and lift them up. So I took a role to lead that specific project, and I had to speak to, you need to identify who to speak to or talk to and know how to talk to that specific person. And also, as a youth, you need to be a bit proactive. Again, you don't need to wait, because we are driven by that factor that, the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. I think we need to understand that tomorrow is now. It starts from now. So you need to take your tomorrow and make it near. So being proactive is research a bit about opportunities that are out there, go for them. And if also you see an opportunity that you feel you can be able to handle or take over, do not be afraid. Remember, your strength will be seen. And then when you get that opportunity, deliver. Yeah.
When you get the opportunity, deliver. But also don't just sit around. Fantastic. Any challenge, Justin, that any challenge to business leaders or young people that you may have?
Allow me to start with the youth, because that's where now I sit in. One of the largest or the biggest challenge that a youth will face is the fear of the unknown. So you're either afraid of stepping out of your comfort zone, and also you're fearing to fail. Failing is an experience, and when you now do it again, you do not come from a point of unknown. At least you have experience of what not to do. So never be afraid to fail. So there's need for the youth to be able to be proactive again. I cannot stop echoing that word, and we use it very much when when we go to interviews, but we actually don't know the real meaning of it. So you need to step up and go over and above what you expected to do. But then to the business leaders, it is good for you to always have an open hand. When you see a youth who reaches out to you and needs a hand-holding or mentorship, please walk with them. And not only walk with them when they need you, but also do a follow-up thereafter to ensure that they are within the right path. Remember, we have very vibrant youth who have a lot of energy. The only thing that they require is a bit of structure. So there's high probability that they can overdo some things and they can go over and above the professional guidelines or framework. But then when you handhold them and direct them to the right procedure or the right path, they'll be able to conform. And for people who are in organization, promote well-being. And I think this, so you'll find people in workplaces getting meltdowns, probably because of various aspects, which probably we're going to touch base later on. But then there's need for you as a business leader to come out and promote well-being culture, where people are given the platform to also do work without fear, but also have some aspect of life. So do not incriminate or subject somebody to to
Justin,
unnecessary.
I don't know if I'm the only one having.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. So saying, do not subject somebody to unnecessary pressure if at all they want to have a bit of life and work balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I don't know if I'm the only one who was having issues hearing the sound properly from you, but we got the gist of what you're saying. Now, let me just follow up with you on this, because I also work with young people through the mentorship program. And one of the very often things I hear is we are not given opportunities. We are not given a chance. If we only could have been given a chance, it will make a difference. What will you say to that?
Thank you, Douglas, for that. Funny enough, yesterday we were discussing about a phrase which I'll put it across. please note a no is an activation for a yes. So you waiting for you to be given a chance, it may never come. Remember, not every leader or somebody who's at that high platform is willing to pinpoint somebody. And actually, they don't even know who to pinpoint. So you need to stand up. Raise your hand if it's in a forum and you need to speak up about something. It is better for you to get a no, because that means that person has seen you and they have opted not to give you that chance, than just sitting there pretty, sorry to use that word, but then sit down there and wait for you to be called. So again, be proactive, stand up, go for that opportunity, go for that specific session, ask for ask for a chance to either speak up or address a certain issue. And kindly, if you get that chance, remember you will be standing or representing so many other youth who would have wanted to have that platform. Deliver. And deliver can also be ensure that whatever you're about to speak up about is something that is logical and relevant. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Justin. A no is an activation for a yes. I love that. One of the things I like saying is, and encouraging, especially young people, is what is the worst that will happen to you? Yes, you can go for that interview. If you don't get the job, it is still okay. At least you've gone through the process, you've gained a few of experience, you've learned a few things, and you build on your previous experiences as you go by. And I love the a no is an activation for a yes. So never back down because it's a no. You keep on pressing, but also keep on taking advantage of the opportunities to showcase your skills and talents. Let me just also remind the audience that you are encouraged to share your questions in the chat function, and we will, if you have a specific question for a specific panelist, please feel free to share that, and we will, of course, read out your question depending on the time, and we'll be able to respond to it. So kindly feel free to use the chat function to share your question. It may not even necessarily have to be a question or a comment. If you have any feedback, if you have any suggestion, if you want to be, we want to include you in this discussion, so feel free to speak up. I want to bring in Isabel. Or is it Isabel? Isabel, to you, women accountants have grown significantly over the last 2 decades. What role has the profession played in diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Thank you, Douglas.
Go ahead, we can
Thank
hear
you, Douglas. Your video seems to have frozen a bit.
Can I repeat the question?
Yes, I had the question, but your video seemed to have frozen a bit. So I just wanted to confirm whether I'm being heard. So basically, I just want to talk a bit, to answer that question, I'd like to talk a bit about history. Are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. I'd like to talk a bit about history. So in 1978, when we are talking about inception, ISPAC inception, we had only 8 women, registered 8 women CPAs in Kenya, from a total of 510 CPAs. So that meant that about 1.5% of the population was women. And then we move into 2002, when we had 2,931 accountants registered, and about 360 of those were women. That's what, 12%, give or take, CPAs registered in 2002. And then we move on to now current, the year 2022, where we have about 23,000 in total CPAs within Kenya, and 10,875 of those are women. This is 47%. So imagine within a span of just 20 years, we've grown to 12% representation, women accountants within the country, to 47%. And this number can only continue to grow. And this has not basically happened in a void. One, of course, it's so clear to see how far we have come, but there's been a lot of effort put in. One, concerted effort from the government, through inclusion of women or diversity in appointments. We've seen nomination to government boards for women accountants being given a priority. We've seen the government going out of its way to ensure that a large percentage of their employees are women. So this has really encouraged women in various professions, and that's not just accountancy, to pursue the various professions, because clearly there's a lot of opportunity out there. Other than that, our institute also, that is ISPAC, together with the association that I currently chair, that is Association of Women Accountants of Kenya, we carry out a lot of mentorship and CSR activity in girls' schools. Like this year, around October, which is this coming month, we have a CSR planned for Eastern Kenya, where we are going to visit about 4 schools, 4 girls' schools. And what we do when we visit those schools is not just take our donations, but we also carry out a lot of mentorship and talk to high school girls to ensure that they concentrate a lot in STEM. Historically, we saw a lot of girls going into the arts. So trying to encourage them to go into STEM. And those that are truly interested in math, we can also encourage them to look at accountancy as a profession of choice. Okay, and those are one of the several ways in which we have ensured that the number of women are growing within the accountancy profession. And I'm sure if you looked at other professions, be it the legal profession, medicine, you'll see a lot of female doctors, you'll see a lot of female lawyers, compared to probably when we got independence, compared to the 70s, even compared to about 20 years ago. As you can see, in 20 years ago, we had 14% women representation within the accountancy profession. I would also want to say that there's a lot that also needs to be done. In our history as an institute, that is ISPAC, we have only had 2 female chairpersons out of over 20 chairpersons that the institute has had. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm happy to say that in 2019, we were able to elect our second chairperson or president of ISPAC, as you may, a female chairperson. And it is sad that she ended up serving mainly during the COVID era, but she did quite a lot. We were able to see a lot of policy changes, a lot of statutory and legal changes being submitted to Parliament through, of course, Treasury, and which have gone through and which have been to the advantage of the accountancy profession. So she's a tough lady. Her name is FCPA Rose Mora, did quite a lot for the profession. And I'm sure when even the gentlemen within the profession see how much she has done, they are more likely to elect a female president in future, as compared to probably if she had done nothing. So a lot of effort has gone in, a lot of work being done, and a lot of pushing and ensuring that women take up our space, because as we've been told, even as we were growing up, that nobody is going to hand you power, you have to take it. So as women in the accountancy profession, we've formed an association that basically pushes and ensures that the voice of the female accountant is heard. We are also ensuring that even as we exit through retirement and whatnot, we have young women who are currently in school who we are mentoring to ensure that they take up this profession and build on what we have done, as we are building on what others before us built, so that even as we exit, we are leaving a profession in the safe hands of our youth, who include women. And hopefully we are going to see, say the 51%, we say in Kenya, we have 51% women. So we are going to see 51% of accountants being women. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you very much. You know, with growth comes challenges. And, you know, you've taken us through a very good historical perspective of the significant growth. So my question to you is, what has this growth done? I mean, in terms of what has this growth faced in terms of challenges?
The main challenges actually is, I guess probably at the beginning would be the perception. I think most parents, sadly mine included, were more willing to drive us towards more female, perceived as female professions. I remember my parents really wanted me to pursue nursing when I left high school. And this is what historically used to happen. I'm happy to see that currently most parents would very likely encourage their daughters to pursue careers in STEM, careers in, careers that we considered male-dominated careers previously. Another thing is probably financial challenges. As you know, in Africa, when most families encounter financial challenges and can only send a few of their children to school, they tend to send the male children to school. When they may not afford to send the children maybe to college, probably the male child will get an advantage over their sisters. Because it is considered that these are the people who are going to be heads of the family in future. So basically you can understand where that feeling is coming from, that you want to build the future families of your children, where women would probably be relegated to a support role, okay? But this is changing with a lot of financial aid going towards ensuring financial aid. By then I'm talking about higher education loans boards and other loans that go towards ensuring that female children are also basically able to access education and education facilities. Other challenges still under financial, probably recently, we went through COVID-19. And one of the things that happened during then is we had a lot of people who either lost their jobs or were getting maybe slashed salaries. And one of the things that suffered is, of course, professions, the number of people who ensured that they meet maybe their CPDs, that is continuous professional development, in the various professions they are in. And for all the professions are normally, professionals are required to attend a number of continuous professional development hours just to ensure that they keep current. So what our institute, that is ISPAC, did is provide CPDs at very low rates, most of them online. As you remember, most of us were unable to meet physically, so ensure provision of online CPDs, provision of very discounted CPDs and some free, just to ensure that every accountant had an opportunity to meet their annual quota of CPDs during 2020 and 2021. And this really boosted and has ensured that our CPA numbers have continued to grow year by year. The other thing that has also happened towards those challenges is we have had, as I said before, the previous chair had carried out a lot of policy and statutory changes, and we've had associate CPAs, those are students who are currently pursuing accountancy, being allowed to register as members of the institute. And in this case, they are able to access training facilities at very low rates. And this encourages them that by the time they clear their college, they are able to now register as full-fledged accountants within the country. For each challenge, there's been a lot of, I would say, positive moves towards meeting those challenges and ensuring that we move on as a profession and as a country. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Isabel. And, you know, I like the way you've also answered those. My last question in twofold. You have mentioned about the challenges, but as you know, in your answers, you have also been giving some of the solutions that you're doing. You know, some of the things that you're doing in addressing those challenges. So thank you very much. Before I'm seeing really, you know, good question coming in the chat. And Lydia, before I'll come to your question, but I want to first of all, you know, highlight the question by Arita, and I will send this question to you, Njeri. And Arita is asking about, you know, the diversity. You know, the emphasis has always been on gender, youth, underprivileged, and so on. How about diversity in terms of culture? What is your take in navigating the various cultural differences? I think this is very fundamental, and more often than not, the discussions I hear about you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talk a lot about people living with you know, disabilities, age. We talk about gender, but rarely talk about ethnicity and race, and particularly from you know, a cultural perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And it's true. Often, every time we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it always somehow ends up as either women, and to some extent more recently, age. But of course, as we said, it was different. As you said at the beginning, different groups. Can they eat your food? Do they feel included? And there's so many different variables when it comes to the aspect of diversity. It could even be ability. People are differently abled, and so on. The culture one is big. It's interesting that for us in Kenya, at times you'll even hear the definition of when you're told if you're looking for a hardworking person, hire from this tribe. If you're looking for a loyal person, hire from this tribe. If you're looking, if you hire someone from my community, for example, you should be watching your money because perhaps you don't know how safe your money is. This are, as I said, undertones that form biases around what we end up doing or not doing with different cultures. At the end of the day, I say nobody chooses to be born in one culture or the other, just like nobody chooses to be born in one gender or the other, or whether someone chooses to be born younger today. And I keep saying you can't do anything about your age. If you're young, you're young. You can't suddenly make yourself a lot older. At the end of the day is one, as leadership, being very conscious about our environments and being deliberate to make sure that our programs and our environment is inclusive, whether it's our hiring processes, whether it's our day-to-day management processes. Do these people have an opportunity to escalate these issues where they feel some form of discrimination or otherwise? So we'll have those proactive aspects to make sure it is not happening, but also at the end of the day, those aspects of fixing where we don't identify these issues arise. At the end, also, we've said as we also grow in these different cultures, the representation has to be there. We, as the different people, in whether you feel that your culture is not included, again, as we said from the beginning, raise your hand, get a seat at the table, because nobody will speak to your interests as well as you will. So that then when we are at the table, we're able to drive policy changes that support that diversity that we very much desire. But at the end of the day, I said it is leadership. Yes, it will be us. More importantly, being very conscious that it begins with us. It begins with us saying, what is happening around me? I may not be part of that that race or that tribe or that religion that is discriminated against, but I can also be an ally. I can also raise my voice and say, this is not working, this is not right. So there's a couple of things to it. If I'm a part of it, how do I participate at the table so I'm able to have my voice heard? If I'm not part of it, how can I be an ally? How can I be able to stand up to it and say this is not right? Being deliberate as well as leadership to create an environment and policies and frameworks that support diversity, but at the same time, a setup that says if it does happen, because there are situations where it will, that there's actually visible action and remedies that continues to create confidence that this is center stage for the business.
Thank you, and Njeri. Two things have stood out from your response, and one is creating an enabling environment at our workplace, but also in our homes and community for people to be able to express themselves culturally. And I was reminded of this discussion some time ago in Kenya that we were talking of a national dress, and I don't know what that became of. And I was wondering that I kept on thinking, in our offices, for instance, do we have certain days where we encourage people to dress in their cultural attire to come to the office to basically just express themselves? Do we have an enabling environment where someone is able to express themselves in a language that they're comfortable with, for instance. And I think that is very fundamental when you talk of, diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of culture. Justin, there's a wonderful question here that has come from Lydia Kello. And thank you, Lydia, for even your follow-up question, which we'll come back to. She says that I must confess that a lot has been done to empower the girl child. How can we ensure a balance and that the younger and upcoming generation, the boy child, is not left out? How can we ensure inclusivity for the new generation Z?
Wow, that's definitely that's a big issue. We can clearly see it. I think we've done, I wouldn't say a lot, but we've done much in girl child empowerment, and the boy child has been left out. And this we can see in the crop of, let me call them boys who are coming up, who, to the social way of evaluating a boy, there's a miss. Whether that is correct or not, there is a notable gap. But allow me to first of all discuss about this Generation Z that she has talked about. It's a very interesting group, to be sincere. It is said that Generation Z is taking human resource managers or departments to see shrinks or psychiatrists, because they are redefining conventional or old school ways of doing things. One of the interesting thing, which is aligned to the topic of the day, they are very brave. Generation Z do not shy away from speaking their mind, which is a positive thing. I have had the privilege of working with, I think, 2 so far from that category of Generation Z. And for me, I am usually perplexed every day, purely because they don't shy away from anything. They'll qualify very well. The only challenge is, again, they have too much energy. And as much as we give a platform for people to speak up, at times they can go overboard, and therefore there's need to harness all that. How I wish all that energy can be harnessed into productivity, because I think, and don't get me wrong, it's not that they do not, they do not produce or they are not very productive, but then if it was harnessed to productivity, I think they can do marvelous work. So again, it goes to mentorship and being, performance managed to ensure that they hit their milestones. But then when it comes to boy child, there is need for people or programs. Remember, at Intellecap, I work with programs, and therefore we get a bit to manage donor funding and also pass certain agendas from multilateral organizations. And we've seen that need coming up. So there's need for us to also focus on boy child, whereby they get empowered and they get to have that courage to speak up. It's a very good thing that the girl child is empowered, because when you empower a girl, you empower society. That still remains to be the truth. But also we need to bring the boy child to be able to now also come up and also stand, because that's we are fighting for equality. And I do believe the people who are in the market or who are considered to have developed over time and have experience and exposure, they need to be a bit intentional in bringing up or mentoring these younger boy childs to ensure that they groom them in a way that they can be responsible, because also that is a miss that we can see in the boys who are coming up, and also enabling them to be courageous and speak up. That is a miss. So on Generation Z, I don't think we have much problem. It's just about being harnessed to the right thing and enabling them to understand their structures to do some things. And but they are redefining everything. I am super excited to see what the future holds, because they do not believe in 8 to 5, which most of us are accustomed to. Working from the offices, they do not understand why we need to go to the office when we can still deliver at home. COVID has also made us a bit remote, but then this generation is just amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Very good response. And I just want to read a comment by Methula, and Methula says that I truly appreciate Justin's sentiments on younger individuals and needing structure for their full potential to materialize. It becomes very valuable as a young professional to work with someone who has been where you are and understands your development needs. This is really good. Thank you so much, Methula, for your response. And Justin, we appreciate what you do. Isabel, I want to bring you back into this conversation. And there's an interesting, question that has come from Catherine Duarte. And don't worry, Lydia, your second question, I still have eyes on it. We'll respond to it. And Catherine is asking, Catherine is saying, are we conscious of the fact that the number of youth who have additional needs, such as autism and ADHD, which basically ADHD means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So she's asking, do we know that these needs have, these issues have additional needs and various non-visible disabilities are rising, and we'll need to accommodate them in the near future? I don't know, what is your response to Catherine?
Sadly, for countries such as ours, countries that are still developing, countries where poverty levels are quite high, children or kids with special needs tend to fall through the cracks. And that is just a very sad fact. When it comes to at least children who are born probably in more affluent households, or households where the parents are better informed, more well-informed, and can probably afford to put such children through certain schools where probably the teacher-student ratio is a bit accommodating, and teachers are able to realize that certain students need probably more of an effort from the teacher. They may need a different approach to teaching. But when it comes to parents who may not be able to afford that, or parents who may not sometimes even be aware of what their children are facing, they tend to go through maybe the public education system, where you have a large pupil to teacher ratio, so a lot of students for very few teachers. And sometimes when you lump them in with the other students, then such children tend to suffer. Parents will consider them either to be misbehaved, or even, and teachers also the same. Other students will also see them as not fitting within the box, okay? And sometimes they end up being punished due to no fault of theirs. They are considered maybe misbehaved. Sometimes they would be considered as kids who are, and this is not a very polite word to use, but teachers will use it because you will think that this is either a stupid child who will probably never be able to perform or be able to be a productive member of society. And that is just a very sad fact. It's something that probably the Western world went through, tens or decades ago. And this is what our children are going through now. But the beauty is with the kind of education that even our teachers are currently undertaking at the universities and in the various colleges, they are also being taught to pick, certain behavioral tendencies from kids, so that they're able to realize that some of these children will require special or different attention from their regular students. And when teachers are able to do this, and sometimes probably this is something that can also be answered with the new education system that we have here in Kenya, that was just introduced, that is the competency-based system, which is still under a lot of discussion, and still probably a lot of the public needs to understand in order to be able to embrace. This is something that will actually be able to accommodate such children with special needs, because some needs, we are looking at people with physical challenges rather than some of the people who might have challenges that are not visible to us, as the person who has raised the question mentioned. So it behooves all of us as a country, as a society, to be able to realize that not everybody will fit our square peg, okay? And we need to go out of our way to ensure that we have an inclusive society where children or people with special needs are also included in the decision-making tables. As has been said before, if you are not on the decision-making table, you're probably part of the menu, okay? If you're not part of the discussion, if you're not in the discussion at the table, you're probably part of the menu. So let's not have people with special needs or children with special needs being part of the menu. Let's include them on the decision-making table. And when that happens, we have had, I think, presidents in the US with ADHD. When that happens, then they are able to ensure that there are policies in place that ensure that these kids are well taken care of, that people with special needs are well taken care of and included within the society as people who can contribute positively in our society and country. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Isabel. You know, that question that Catherine has asked, and your response has also, made me really think hard. And that is the conversation you're going to have shortly on, the impact or the role of mental health vis-a-vis diversity, equity, and inclusion. And before I go to Lydia's question, and I will, circle this to you, Njeri. There was a discussion I was following up early this week on Twitter of, I don't know, some of you saw a video of a member of county assembly in Turkana who struggled to read. She was being inaugurated and she really struggled to read, and she was taking, the oath of office, and she really struggled, and there was quite a divided opinion on social media. And I remember a very prominent influencer, social media influencer in Kenya, who put on his Facebook page, and he really bashed the woman to say, how can the people elect such a woman who cannot read, and she's supposed to do policies, and this no wonder these people are poor and all that. And I kept on going through the comments, and what stood out for me is there was a resident of that community who works in Nairobi, in a very big career. And he said, and he gave a perspective, he said, we are okay with electing her, by the way, because in the last general election, we elected someone very educated and they have done nothing. And yet there was also someone who is very uneducated, who has not gone to school, who was also elected. And you could see the one who is not very well, the one who has no formal education has done very well in terms of development, as opposed to the person who is very well educated. And it made me started thinking, as I was preparing, of course, for this meeting, it kept me thinking of, do we really now need to really have this conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our political, sphere? Because are we moving, or are we taking people away from leadership just because they don't have any formal education, and yet they are able to achieve, or perform, of their responsibility? And I'm saying this to bring you, Njeri, into the discussion and ask you the question that has come from Lydia Akello. And, remember that the topic is building braver cultures. And for you to be braver, there are decisions you have to make. So she said, how can we ensure that we collectively and inclusively move together with, people who are shy, quiet, introverts, or those, particularly at the workplace, who who can speak up. They don't have a voice to air their opinions, and yet they are willing to be part of the process. Njeri.
Thank you for that. And even just coming from what you were discussing, I usually say if you get a fish out of water and ask it to race, you perhaps could say the fish is not very good. So yes, the whole aspect of determining, what is the real measure when we decide someone is competent or not. And I like to say the beauty about human beings is there are different types of intelligence, all of which are valid. We are all not doctors. We are all not aeronautical engineers. We are all not in ICT. And yet all of this, intelligences, when they all come together, an amazing cocktail. So yes, those different intelligences are definitely something we must value and promote. Again, maybe it's also part of diversity, is not a different group, different knowledge sets, but perhaps one that will increasingly grow in us being conscious. Now, to Lydia's question, and indeed, the one thing about personalities is we are all very different in how we engage. Some people are bolder, some people are probably more conservative, some people are more engaging, and so on. I see this as an opportunity that can be tackled on two levels. And I see the aspect of asking, how can we collectively move together? How can we inclusively move together? One, again, as leadership, for us as leaders, being aware of our teams. I mean, you really, as a leader, must be the kind of person who's willing to, and I say leader because we all can be leaders without titles, to say, for everyone that's working within my environment, what are the different personalities I'm working with? And what I also like to say, when we hear the aspects of being shy, being quiet, being introverts, I also like to say some of this could be developmental areas in terms of, if I work, why am I shy? Because to be a leader, you will raise your hand. To be a leader, you will raise your voice, you'll speak. Your communication could be more subtle. Another person could be more louder. So for leaders, harnessing the different skill sets, but also helping each individual identify areas that they could grow in or improve in. Why are we shy, for example? Why are we not able to, what is that going on in there? And having that conversation and saying, how can you grow? And which is why I say mentorship is part of part of giving back or passing on the baton as we grow. As we're told, as you go up, means you have a voice that you perhaps can share to speak up for those who may not have a voice of their own. And I use this example especially for women, those of us who work in urban areas, those of us who are in positions of influence, perhaps speaking for that woman in the rural area who does not have this platform to be able to speak up for their concerns. How do we use our voice for that person? So again, for those of us who are in positions of influence, using our voice to represent and speak up for those who don't. But for those of us who are leaders, identifying the different knowledge sets within our teams and working and mentoring and developing others to work on the areas that they could improve on. But last but not least, I'm often saying no one is coming to save you. Like I said, nobody's coming to save me. What am I willing to do? Every other time, do I do a SWOT analysis? What am I good at? Because every environment will require different skill set. What am I good at that will make me succeed in a certain type of environment? What do I need to improve on? And having authentic conversations in those areas of what I must improve in to be able to have the kind of growth that I envision. So again, the leadership does have a role. We all have roles as allies. But I am the center of that conversation as to what I am willing to do to bridge that collective and inclusivity aspect of it.
Well said, Lydia. Can you confirm if you're able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you able to
Can you
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes,
Sorry,
you're
I
all
couldn't
audible.
hear. I'm assuming everyone can hear me. Please let me know if you're not able to hear me. Well said, Lydia. Well said, Njeri. And one of the things that I wanted to just mention from my own, organization, what we've done is that over the years, we realized there are people who are, as a result of their personality, they are very outspoken, they are very opinionated, and in meetings, they almost seem more often to just I seem to have dropped off. So as I was saying, in our organization, we noticed that there were people who are very opinionated and very outspoken, and they will more often just take over the meeting. And so what the leadership decided was they started choosing people who are not very well spoken, and they are given deliberately an opportunity to lead the meetings, but also to share their views. So it's just being deliberate, the way Njeri has said, those who have, the leadership opportunities, just being deliberate and raise the voice of the ones who don't seem to speak very much, either because they have not been given an opportunity or because the ones who are very opinionated seem to really take over, particularly in meetings or in conversations. Allow me now to, as we are almost coming, towards the tail end of today's discussion, and my last question to all the panelists is about mental health. And you can take around 2 minutes each, and then we will wind up. So mental health is potentially, a result of keeping quiet or not speaking up when there's inadequate regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion subjects. What can be done individually and collectively to address this? And how can one manage the pressure and seek support from colleagues and friends? I will start with you, Justin, then I will go to Isabel, then we will finish with Njeri.
Sure. Mental health is coming up as a very, a big issue in our society. And allow me to say something, especially to the youth. There is nothing wrong by you raising your hand and saying, I am swamped, I need help. There's nothing wrong with that. And in our organization, Intellecap, we actually promote that a lot. Because again, there's that aspect whereby everybody can be engaged in their own work, such that one person can be, drowning, quote unquote, in their work, and therefore they are struggling. So on a personal level, allow me to say two things. You need to have and build strong circles around you. And this circle can be for you to speak up when you feel you're overwhelmed, but also a strong circle that can be able to identify when there's change of behavior from their own friend. So it's for you to speak up, but even in an aspect whereby you fall under the introvert and you're shy, they can be able to see that so-and-so has been behaving very weird, and therefore there's need for us to reach out. Secondly, which is something that is being embraced, and I'm super glad that people are embracing it. And I've had with some colleagues telling me that, be deliberate to go to, again, allow me to use this word, to shrinks, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, counselors. So there are free counseling services that are offered. I will not even go into our usual religious institutions, but then one of the ones I can recommend is at Sitam Valley Road. Most of the people who do counseling go for attachment at Sitam Valley Road. So this means even if you don't want to, to have a religious kind of counseling, you will find counselors who are doing attachment there, and therefore you can be able to speak up and see how they're going to assist you. Please note, it is not like a switch. Don't expect that you're going to speak to them and then get a solution and walk home, feeling okay. So it's a journey. But then on an organization perspective, organizations need to put in strong policies that promote, discussions around depression, areas around peer-to-peer assistance. For example, one of the things that I've seen that works in our organization, we have a buddy system. So this means when somebody comes in new, I am given a buddy, somebody who's new, for me to handhold them until they are okay. They are expected to speak to me and talk to me about issues over and above work. So they can easily tell me, I'm working on this and I feel overwhelmed. So I'll be able to stand in the, stand in the gap to speak to whoever they're supposed to report to or their supervisor. And there's also performance management. So performance manager will be somebody who you are not directly working with. So this means they will not incriminate you in relation to your delivery. So they'll be always eager to know, how are you doing? How's your personal life as well? Because we understand personal life can affect how somebody does their work in, performs in their workplace. And the last thing is about leaders, please promote well-being. I do understand you want to get value for your money, whatever that means, such that you want to give a salary for somebody who has actually worked for it. But then somebody who has work-life balance will be more productive than somebody who works over and above, 12 hours in a day. So that's my take to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Well said. Isabel, I will ask the same question. I don't know whether you want me to repeat it. It's basically mental health. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. So when it comes to mental health, as human beings are social creatures, we do not live in a vacuum. And it behooves each and every one of us to create social circles around us, be it friends, sometimes colleagues or people who share the same interests as we do, or even family. And we have this, then you have people that you can talk to, somebody that you can go to when sometimes things are not panning out the way you expect them to be. And when it comes to people who have social circles around them, they tend to have a lot of support. And this support leads to them not facing some of these psychological issues alone. However, it also, one of the things that normally happens, and I believe this is probably not just in Kenya, but across Africa, is the negative perception we have towards psychiatry and psychological issues. People are not willing to talk when they are facing certain issues because they will be perceived in a negative way. And this, cuts across, be it at the workplace. It would be a bit difficult for an employee to go to their supervisor and, sometimes talk about the issues that they are facing, because you tend to think, or you want to separate your work life from your personal life. When it comes even to the industry that is hosting us today, insurance industry, we have seen that sometimes even some of the medical policies that are there, or health policies that are there, tend to discriminate against psychiatric issues. When you look, I would urge you to go and look at probably your medical cover today, the details, and you will see that they will separate psychiatry issues and want to allocate a very small amount of money towards that, to probably cover themselves against losses. But that also means that we have people who may even have insurance covers, but are not able to access psychiatric help or psychological help because of finances, especially when insurance covers will not cover that. So I think it should be a policy within probably a medical policy, a statutory policy that should ensure that such perceptions or such discriminations do not occur, whether in the workplace or when it comes to insurances. And also a lot of education that needs to go to people, so that we accept that psychological issues could be an illness, just like any other illness someone will have. So it would be easy for me to say, sorry, today I have a cold, I'll not be able to come in. but difficult for me to say, sorry, today I'm, feeling depressed or down or suicidal, and I may not be able to come in or I need help. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you so much. Well said, Njeri.
Thank you, and thank you for that. I agree that, of course, mental health is here with us. Often we ask, why is it more prominent now? Is it more awareness, or is it just perhaps the demands of life and the stresses of it have just become unbearable? And at the end of the day, it cuts across the divide. Will be more susceptible to it than others. COVID was an interesting dynamic. Some people are happier with work life, working from home. For women, I think it was that much more straining. You now have your child running into your meeting, and otherwise somehow the schools expect you to be a teacher, stroke, whatever else you do, stroke, every other thing. But I think the first thing, especially for leadership, and I say it has to start with that aspect of being conscious to create enabling spaces, is being conscious that what are these triggers that result in mental health issues. How is our workload? Does someone have a reasonable workload? Or is it unreasonable that they end up overstretched, they end up having to work nights? Is it reasonable? Is there a feedback mechanism for us to be able to hear how well it is going? And I think that's a conversation that must happen. If I am I'm struggling with a mental health issue, where do I bring it up? Who do I bring it up to? Is there confidentiality? Because as Isabel has said, there's stigma around it. So how do I bring it up? Will it be handled confidentially? And last but not least, and I think Isabel has also touched on it, a lot of organizations, anyone who ideally will be an organized form of an organization will have a corporate health type of insurance. Most of this will have, will have counseling as part of the value additions. So for us, and I'll tell you, for us, from where I work, we often will send reminders and let them know, would you like to speak to a counselor? We will treat it with confidentiality. And this is often driven from a HR standpoint. And the tone from the top is, this is okay. If you're struggling with something, that you can reach out to the counselor directly. As we negotiate for these aspects, this has to be one of the things we check as important, so that people are able to manage their stresses better. So we look at the workload, we take the feedback. My work is too much. I'm not able to handle this, and be able to help people cope better, but also make sure that in the event that there is an issue, as you said, that there's help, and that can be accessed confidentially, and the person feels that they are being taken care of, taking care of the person wholesomely.
Thank you so much for the speakers. This has been really, mind-boggling, but also eye-opening. And, personally, the issue of mental health is very close to my heart. And I have lost a number of colleagues, but also a number of friends and families, just because, the issue of mental health was never taken seriously from a personal and also professional level. I just to, run through what Justina said, we need to build strong circles of friends, so that you are able, friends, colleagues, family, peers, you're able to, they're able to call out, but also you're able to speak up to them confidently. Leaders need to promote well-being, at work-life balance. I think these are conversations that needs to really be amplified. The workload, Njeri also spoke about the workload, feedback mechanism. At our place of work, at our, at our workplaces, at the industry level, what are we doing to promote mental health? There are examples around the world that we can pick of, and I'll give just an example. This I really have to share, because I think it's one of those things that really are practical in terms of work-life balance. The organization I work with, every last week of the quarter, we are given what is called quiet week. Like this week, it's quiet week for us. So from Monday, for the whole week, there are no meetings completely. So no meetings, no Zoom, nothing. And you're given just to work on your emails, and you can work from home, you can take some time off, and the organization also became very flexible when COVID began, just in terms of leave days. So they're not that it has to be just 21 days, whenever you feel really like a burnout, you can just take some time off and just take a break from work. So that flexibility at the workplace, I think, is very important, and organization really need to give this a higher priority. And people, people are battling a lot of things from family level to their profession. So I think this becomes very important. I want to welcome, as we close, I want to welcome Martin Macharia to give us a vote of thanks. Martin Macharia is the AIG Kenya Diversity and Inclusion Champion. I have to say that very confident because I really love his title. So Martin, please, over to you.
Thank you, Douglas. Spectacular job. Even as we come to the end of the session, this is a point I'll just like to request each one of you just to make a buzz in the market and just bring awareness to each one of us that, this Dive In 2022 is up and running. And I'd like just all of you just to go to your social media handles. It can be LinkedIn, it can be WhatsApp, it can be Twitter. You can just use hashtag Building Braver Cultures. It can be hashtag Dive In 2022. Just drop in something and just say the nuggets of wisdom that you have learned. So as we come to an end also, I just want to say thank you to Douglas. You have done an amazing job as a moderator. Thank you so much. To our panelists, you have given us nuggets of wisdom. You have given us advice. You have given us so many things to think about, even as we leave this platform. So thank you to Jomo, thank you to Justin, thank you to Isabel, thank you so much. And to our event partner, Association of Women Accountants in Kenya, thank you so much for just agreeing to be our partners. We have done an exciting thing and an eventful event, and we are so proud of ourselves. To the DE&I committee here in Kenya, Anaklet and myself, just want to say thank you, Anaklet, for organizing this event. And above all, we just want to say thank you to the participants for just availing yourself, for gracing us with your presence, and for making this event very fruitful. And as 2 minutes to exit, I just want to leave you with two things. And one is just a quote. And the quote says, diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. And belonging is having that voice being heard. And the last thing will be the video for Dive In. So have a blessed day ahead, be safe and be blessed.